We want to be heard because fundamentally we want to feel valued. So if I go in to see any kind of expert, it could be a GP or a nurse, a clinician, it could be in another field. If I feel they're not listening to me, they're jumping to conclusions, they're just talking at me, I actually don't feel that connected to them. Anyway, good morning and thank you. I was asked to give a very quick talk, so I will be fast, to talk about how we can use design when we're thinking about changing health outcomes and improving things for people. And I wanted to start back at the beginning of my career, which is slightly further away than I wish it was. And I started in the space of environment and health. It was at a time where we started to see the links between the environment we live in and our health. That was my starting point. I was tasked with tackling inequalities in our community. I was the first jointly funded post holder in the London Borough of Barnet between Barnet Health Authority and Barnet Planning Authority. So this was stitching together government and public services in a way that hadn't been done previously to really recognise that people don't live in silos. So the environment we live in affects our health. And thank you, Eugene, and the talks we've heard today have already emphasised that. We'll hear more about that, I'm sure, over the next 2 days. The environment we live in has a huge impact on our health at the macro level and also in our personal spaces. But also we can use our environments to positively influence our health. So I was tasked with tackling issues that were causing detriment to the environment, which therefore would affect health, but also looking at how we could improve environmental conditions and looking at other ways of really looking at preventative care so that people could live more healthily by default. Two of the areas in particular that we looked at were fuel poverty, which in the UK is a big thing. Oh, in case you can't tell, I'm from the UK. I know my Singlish accent's so strong now, right? I've lived in Singapore for 12 years. I still don't have a very strong Singlish accent, but nonetheless, forgive me. So, in the UK, fuel poverty has a huge impact on health, a huge impact. In fact, every winter we see people dying because they can't afford to keep their homes warm. It can affect their health long-term in terms of respiratory illnesses. It can put them at increased risk of cardiovascular issues, stroke, and so on. But it also literally means we have seniors who cannot afford to heat their homes, literally getting hypothermia and passing away, because they're in survival mode. And if we go to them and say, I need you to think about what's best in the long term, they're actually just thinking about how I get through to tomorrow. Another area of poverty we looked at was food poverty is an interesting one, but I didn't look at that. I looked at food poverty. And this was looking at those families living on the breadline, really, who had to make very difficult decisions about how I feed my family. And really, when we went out and observed what they're doing and the decisions they were making, it was again about survival. I need to make sure that wherever I put the few pounds or dollars that I have, my child will eat that food and not go to bed hungry. And so when we look at all the advice, you need to have a beautiful, balanced wheel of health on your plate. You need vegetables, you need a protein, you need carbohydrates. They should be, organic, fresh, nutritious. The reality is that's hard to prepare. It's more expensive. And what we saw were a lot of single mums buying Mars bars. I don't even like them. Mars bars, really sickly, dense bars. Sorry, Mars, it's just not my choice. But they were giving their children Mars bars for dinner because that's the easiest way of making sure they will eat the food and go to bed not feeling hungry. So very often when we talk about health, it doesn't connect with the people we're focusing on because long-term health is a luxury. Many of them are looking at things in a survival mode. Just how do I get through to tomorrow? They don't always make decisions that are for the best in the long term, either because they can't or because they have other pressures and priorities. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that in the few minutes I have with you today, but also to think about what do you think of when you think of good health? And we know that we have different lenses on this. Are you that fitness obsessive that feels guilty if they're not going to the gym every day, right? Are you that nutrition obsessive, that plant-fueled, perfectly balanced dietary person that makes sure that every single meal is prepped and pre-planned and carries around their little pots with them to make sure they're always eating that optimal diet? Are you the data geek I do know many of these who are obsessively tracking every biometric and every bit of lifestyle activity they're undertaking so that they can really learn from the hard facts, because hard facts don't lie. Are you going for those regular health screenings to really look about how you can micromanage every aspect of your health? Or are you the person that hangs out with your mates? The person that everyone's going, yeah, that one seems easier to me. Of all the other options, I like this one, yeah. Every single night, you're eating in a social setting. You're engaging with your family and your loved ones. You're sitting in the food court and chatting to your friends day in, day out. Well, actually, there's health benefit in all of these options. We know that this picture here actually is really good for our health. The longest indicator of longevity is having healthy, strong relationships in our lives, but we don't always think about it in that way. We would tend to be more focusing on other instructions to give people and see this as a little bit of a nice to have. But we know that relationships are critical, and when we're looking at population health, it's also a critical lens. And so I think the reason I share this is there's nothing wrong with any of those choices. Everyone has different preferences because we are all different. And we probably have a little bit of all of those people in our lives, a little bit of all of those desires and preferences, because that's how we seek to find balance. And I think recognizing that we're all different is critical to when we think about how we really engage a population to achieve collective better health outcomes. Every one of us has different needs. Every one of us has different experiences that influence the way we do things and our perception of things. We have different daily habits. We have different priorities and urgencies. There are different pressures upon us, and we have different motivations. If you only base your decision-making and planning on your needs, experiences, or your perception of other people's needs, of your experiences of working with them, of your own habits, and think, well, if I could do this, why can't they? If you don't understand the pressures they're going through, how can we really learn how to engage and design for them in a way that will get traction? Do we differentiate our approach to take account of these other aspects? Or do we just focus on needs? Do we, I'm going to say it provocatively, just focus on their clinical needs? Thank you, Eugene, for sharing all those examples that says, no, we don't. We recognize the importance to not just focus on needs. Needs are critical, but these other bits also make a difference. How do we approach those needs as well? I have trained in my life thousands and thousands of public service officers, many of whom have come from the health and social service sectors. And what I see across all domains is what I need you to do. And my cynical comment is sometimes that relates to the KPIs we've got. Okay, don't quote me on that. What do I need you to do, and how am I therefore going to make you do it? I need you to see this is important. I need you to adopt this. I need you to do the way you've been told. How often do we look and say, what do you need to get done? And then how I align around that. Or really, what do you want to get done? Because we prioritize what we want more than what we need, actually. I'll come back to that. Connecting the dots between what we see that they could benefit from, what we see that they need, and what they want really opens up new possibilities. But we have to get beneath the headlines. And what I mean by that is we have to get beneath the headlines, firstly, of our own assumptions. Because we all have biases. And very often we get cynical because day in, day out, we're seeing people doing the same things. And we think, oh, I know why they're doing it. I know, and they're difficult. These people are difficult. They're not behaving the way they should. We need to get beneath the headlines of our assumptions. We need to get beneath the headlines of what we observe. We might see things and then bring that back to our own biases and think, oh, I know why they're doing it. We're quick to jump to assessment and judgment. We need to get beneath the headlines even of what they tell us. Because when you have a very short consultation with someone and you ask them transactional pieces of information, they will share a certain amount. They may not feel safe to share everything. They may not feel they want you to know everything, the real pressures, the things they feel a little ashamed about, the secret motivations. They may not want you to know about all their struggles. They want to focus on the one that they're okay to talk about. And so the difficulty is when we base our information on those short transactions we have with them, we're limiting our understanding of what's beneath the headlines. And so some things to think about human beings. We're not actually that logical. shock, horror. We are driven by emotion. That's brilliant, isn't it? It's what makes us human. Human beings are emotional. It means that we care about others. That's why you're all here. If we didn't have emotion, we'd say, oh, well, the weakest, it's time for them to be done with. We don't think that. Thank goodness. Human beings are emotional, and that is our superpower. But it's also something we very often overlook when we're designing solutions for human beings, yeah? We sometimes forget that we are motivated more by how things make us feel than the logic. If we were purely logical, then education alone would be absolutely sufficient to solve all of these issues. Tell people and they will do it because they will understand the science and the logic. But we don't always do that, right? I was talking the other day to a group from MINDEV, actually, very different audience. And I was talking about breaking the law. I don't know why I admit to these things. I'm now going to do it twice in a week. I jaywalk sometimes. Okay, sorry. I know, I'm so bad. Jaywalking, the naughtiest woman in Singapore. But you know why? The footpaths are designed for the convenience of the cars and not the convenience of the pedestrian. Singapore, I don't know if you step outside very often, it's hot out there, it's hot. And not everywhere has a covered walkway. And near where I live, we have a huge multi-lane road, and very often I need to get to the other side. I'm going to reenact what I need to do. I have to walk along here, press that button, wait for the traffic, walk there. I then have to walk down here in the heat. Then I have to literally walk right back the way. They've planted plants so you can't cut across. Then stand there before you can then go there and cross again. They're zigzagging me in the heat. Now, I'm relatively fit. I just did a dance workout. I'm relatively fit. But add on a few decades to me and add on some heavy bags and add on frailty. And that actually is a mammoth thing. The people, interestingly, that I see jaywalking alongside me, I don't do it all the time because I'm a good girl, really. I don't want to be kicked out of Singapore. The people I see jaywalking the most often, can you guess who? It's the uncles and aunties. And I sit thinking, oh my goodness, please let the cars slow down because they don't care. They're like, you know what? Sod this, I'm walking. I have earned my right to cut across this road because this is ridiculous. And I'm not saying any of that to be critical. What I'm saying is that it was designed from one perspective, keep traffic moving. We all want that. But then what motivation is there for the old auntie and uncle to go out and walk rather than wait for someone to drive me? Yeah. So human beings are emotional. There's nothing wrong with emotionals. Logic and fact doesn't necessarily mean it's better than emotion. We need to understand why people do what they do, fueled by very valid emotions and designed for that reality. And I'm sorry to say, we're also selfish. I say that with the fullest heart. I love helping other people, and it's why my calendar is so packed, because I'm volunteering for things the whole time to help others. And I believe that every one of us in this room cares about other people. Many of us feel like we care about other people more than ourselves. But remember what I shared at the beginning about survival. Fundamentally, we're hardwired to survival. Deep within us, there's something that says, what's in it for me? Why should I go to this effort? And you would believe that every piece of advice you give people is because you believe there's something in it for them. Hey, don't worry about this today. In the long term, here's how you'll benefit. It's a bit like sustainability. It takes me a very long time to see the benefits. And actually, I just want to deal with the pressures I have today. So when we can help people see there's something in it for me, they are more likely to work with us. This isn't a bad thing. When you understand what's motivating them, then you can define how to get them on board. Don't assume that your priorities are the same as theirs. And think about what would make them invest. And the other thing is here, we want to be seen. Thank you for all looking at me. We want to be heard because fundamentally we want to feel valued. So if I go in to see any kind of expert, it could be a GP or a nurse, a clinician, it could be in another field. If I feel they're not listening to me, they're jumping to conclusions, they're just talking at me, I actually don't feel that connected to them. I actually don't feel they care about me. I'm actually far less likely to do this really important thing, which is to trust them. Because I feel you don't actually understand me, you don't want to understand me, you're not listening, you don't see what I'm telling you, and therefore I don't trust you. And here's the key thing. without trust, we don't really absorb information. We don't even listen fully. We're thinking about other things. If we trust someone, we listen. We listen with an open mind. And if we trust someone, we're more likely to accept what they tell us. So it's critical to focus on building trust, which is why this collective approach is critical. We can't do that on our own. We all bring different strengths, and we need to look at that regular engagement. Moving healthcare into the community in that broader sense means we have people in the communities that are building relationships day out and day in. And I will trust that person I see every single day more than I will the doctor I might see once in a blue moon. And so trust should be at the bottom of what we're doing. We build trust by listening. We build trust by engaging. We build trust by consistently delivering on our promises. And I say this as well because our health does not exist in a bubble. When I feel sick, I go to my doctor. And I'm a weird person because I grew up in the UK. We are attached to a GP. So I go to the same GP all the time in the UK. When I moved to Singapore, that model doesn't exist, but I did it anyway. I built my own. I found my local GP that I trusted for 12 years. He knows me inside out, literally. And we'll make the jokes. He says, oh, well, your husband was in yesterday, Tamsin. I shouldn't tell you, but really make sure he looks at his diet. I know. We have a trust-based relationship, which means that I really feel safe with him and I return to him on a regular basis. I didn't need to be bribed by 𝗖cie𝗹𝗹𝗁𝗲 to enroll. I'm not enrolled, of course. I didn't need anyone to tell me to do that. I saw the value of building a trust-based relationship because I needed my doctor to understand that my health is the product of everything going on in my life. And that needs to, any kind of treatment or any kind of care I receive needs to fit into my wider life. So we all know this. When people come in to see us, that health condition, that ailment, that disease is not isolated. It's part of a bigger picture. And this is why taking this more integrated approach is so vital. We need to understand people beyond their ailments, beyond their treatments, and beyond the parts that they show us. We need to engage them to really understand what drives them, what scares them, what are their most pressing needs, not in relation to their care, but their most pressing needs day to day. What irritates them? This can provide a lot of clues. I'm great at telling people what irritates me, so anytime you want to chat, let me know. But the things that irritate them help us understand how to engage with them in a way that will get traction. What helps them feel better? Again, that may have nothing to do with clinical care. What is their comfort? What is the thing that brings them joy? And how can we understand that in order to engage them in a way that resonates? We have to understand what resonates with them if we want to engage them in a way that's meaningful and sustainable. Sustainable beyond us permanently nagging, yeah? The ideal is that you want them to pick up a new way of living and run with it and help everyone else along with them on the way. What do they care about? These are some of the things we need to unpack. And across that, through your engagements and drawing upon the insights you gain from other partners, you'll begin to identify commonalities, patterns. Actually, we see a lot of them feel this. We did a project some years ago, actually with 𝗖cie Community Hospital and Lions Befrienders, and we were exploring putting AI chatbots into socially isolated seniors' homes. And to be frank, the seniors had no interest in having these little robots in their homes. They thought they were going to consume all the energy. They thought they wouldn't be able to work the technology. And one of the ladies from Lions Befrienders was saying, but hey, you can ask it what the time is. Why do I need to ask a robot what the time is, huh? You can ask it what the weather is. I've got a window. They couldn't understand the value proposition. So we stepped back and said, what does worry you? I live alone. My biggest fear, you probably can all guess. My biggest fear is falling down on a Friday night and no one will find me till Monday morning and I don't know if I'll make it. So this robot, if I shout, hey, help, get me help, could it do it? Oh, we could program it to do that. And it tells me what the weather is. And it tells me the time. Oh, okay, I want one. It was the same technology and the same solution, but they needed to see the value proposition. So we have these conversations, not as consultation, but to gain insights and understanding that allow us to create something that will get resonance and will get adopted. We need to identify the unmet needs, and we've heard some of that, but I urge you to look at the unmet needs beyond the clinical. Because whatever chronic condition I have or whatever ailment I have, that's one part of my life, and I don't want to obsess with it. I want to focus on other part of my life. So what are the wider unmet needs? We need to fill the gap or solve a problem in people's lives in order to really make them open up to us. We need to remove the friction, yeah? What irritates them? How do we get rid of that? And here's a little clue. Most people hate filling in forms. I know I'm in Singapore saying this. We hate filling in forms, but it seems that everything we want, there's some form to fill. And rather than getting rid of the forms, we send someone around to help you fill in the form. So maybe that's one thing we do. Get rid of the things people hate. How else might we do that? Make their lives easier. So it's so easy for them to take the healthier steps that we want them to. And how do we create delight? Delight does not need to be a trip to Mandai Rainforest Wild, which, by the way, is excellent, I have to say. Just shout out for Mandai there. Creating delight does not need to be a big wow factor thing. It could literally be small issues that make me feel better, and that we understand by working with them. Many of you will have seen the Cleveland Clinic video, and if you haven't, I urge you to Google it. And there's a guy in there who's in hospital. His only desire is to walk his daughter down the aisle when she gets married. He doesn't care about having perfect functionality or being completely fixed. He just wants to be there well enough to hold his daughter and proudly walk her down the aisle. So what are those things of delight that make them feel better? Through this approach, we can identify the win-win value propositions. In fact, I normally look for triple win. Yeah. How is it that we can achieve the results we want whilst helping the people we serve achieve what they want to do and then bring about better collective health? So that's me done for now. Feel free to stay in touch. You can scan the QR code to link up with me. And I just want to say, I love the fact that there's some of you still doing this in the audience. Well done, May. Thank you very much. Thank you.